Our next panel discussion will talk about how CTOs think about their infrastructure. CTOs of startups, of high-growth startups, of companies that are doing very well for themselves, how do they think about infrastructure and the decisions they make? We have a very esteemed panel today, and it's my pleasure, as we get set up for the panel discussion, to bring them on one by one. Our first panelist is Ajay Srivatsava, CTO of Nolarity. Nolarity, as we all know, is the leading cloud communications provider in emerging markets. Incorporated in August 2009, the company has grown from scratch to a global venture of 550 plus employees. Nolarity provides a suite of hosted products that make business telephony reliable and intelligent. Ajay was previously the head of technology at Oyo Rooms and has also held senior engineering roles in SlideShare and Expedia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ajay Srivatsava. Our next panelist is Anjul Garg, Head of Software Development at Rupaya Exchange. Rupaya Exchange is a leading peer-to-peer lending marketplace that facilitates lending by connecting creditworthy borrowers to lenders across India. With a goal to increase financial inclusion by bringing credit to the common man, Rupaya Exchange facilitates personal and business loans to those who require funds through this virtual platform. Please welcome Anjul Garg. Our next panelist is Mr. Chayan Chatterjee, co-founder and COO at Lattice Innovations. Lattice Innovations focuses on technology design and implementation and collaborates with organizations in the healthcare space to identify and solve challenging problems around healthcare delivery. Lattice provides end-to-end product development support to a wide range of clients, from healthcare providers to medical device manufacturers. They were also among the top 5 startups at BioAsia 2017. Please welcome Chayan Chatterjee. And our final panelist is Raghav Chandra, co-founder and CTO at UrbanClap. UrbanClap is an online platform that helps customers find, vet, and hire trusted service professionals. Raghav previously founded Buggy, a dynamic peer-to-peer auto rickshaw ride-sharing platform, and has also worked in engineering roles in Twitter and Yelp. Please welcome Raghav Chandra. And to moderate the panel, I'd now like to welcome on stage Dr. Rishi Mohan Bhatnagar, who is an established thought leader in the IoT and digital space. He is credited to have continually delivered sustainable revenue growth in the Internet of Things and smart city initiatives, among other digital transformation programs. Dr. Bhatnagar has also co-authored the book titled Enterprise IoT. He has been conferred the Digital Thought Leader Award in the Internet of Things category at the Digital Transformation Forum 2015 by SAP India. Currently, as the president of Aeris Communications, a pioneer in IoT M2M technology company headquartered in Silicon Valley, he is leading the Aeris business in the Indian subcontinent, MEA and APAC region. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Rishi. Yeah, and now, with that, I hand it over to Dr. Rishi to moderate the panel.
Am I audible? Yeah, hi, good morning. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much, Mohan, for introducing us. And I'm very happy to have my co-panelist. My name is Dr. Rishi Bhatnagar, as Mohan mentioned. You know, whenever I used to work for Tech Mahindra before joining Aeris Communication. Aeris Communication is an MVNO at an IoT company. And as part of a big IT services company, we used to have a different kind of challenges when we used to think about what kind of infrastructure we use. And when you are in a startup and you are starting an organization, whether I'm starting a new venture in India from a Silicon Valley company, it was a different kind of thought process. So from scalability to performance to many other things, to the disaster recovery and business continuity, to many other thoughts which you all might be having. I thought this is a very good panel to tell us about the kind of thoughts which they have and the kind of consideration people should have when they're starting a startup on the infrastructure. And I like to start with Ajay because he has, Intel, then LinkedIn, and then now Oyo, and then the new one. So let him start and tell us what has been his thought process, what has been his, thoughts when he thought about the kind of hard infrastructure which they'll be using. Yeah, Ajay.
If you start today, huh?
Sorry?
If
you start today, yes. And what have been, you can take that one.
Yeah. Hi guys. So great to be here, and thanks NASCOM and DigitalOcean for providing the opportunity. So, assuming that most of you are like early stage startups here, and a couple of years ago, when we were working in Oyo rooms, we were in like one room. Oyo room was a one-room company, and few people sitting there and trying to do things, and not even having the website. Oyorooms.com also, if you type, nothing comes. So from that stage, I can give you some perspective, because that is what will relate to you more, not the other larger companies, Intel, Microsoft, big companies. From that perspective, I would say that in the early stage, the decision is more towards speed, whatever gets you to market first, right? That should be your thing. And while doing that, try to be as much as on cloud, because cloud is very cheap nowadays and reliable nowadays, right? So most of the companies, the fast growing companies start on Heroku, right? Heroku mein hosting ho jata hai, application ban jata hai, you can run everything very fast, and most of the basics it provides to start. But don't try to build things yourself, because it might look very lucrative in the beginning that I want more control and I want to run more things. Or on Heroku, I'll not have this control, or on that cloud provider, like these leading ones, you'll not have this control or that control. Don't worry about that. You are not going to need that control at all for a long period of time, right? So start with something that is on, so order should be like this. If I want to make a technology decision, first I will check outside on cloud if something is available to be bought or for free at a reasonable price. First option is that reasonable price. If something can be given to somebody else, infrastructure outside, give it to them. If that is not possible, then you think of on cloud itself, host an open source thing. The last option should be to build it yourself. But what happens normally is that engineers are excited, enthusiastic. I'll build it myself. So that killer instinct we have to avoid in the beginning, because once you build it, the analogy I give is that if you want to drink milk, get a packet milk outside first. Don't bring a cow and put it in your backyard that I want to drink milk. Because you have to maintain her every day. You have to go khana khilana padega, safai karna padega. It is lot more cost, right? So decision making is simple. It should be on cloud. It should be something that others focus on your niche thing. What problem you are solving? Don't try to solve the problem that others have solved. Stand on the shoulders of existing technologies and stand on the shoulders of giants, and then build over it your niche delta that you are adding, right? The analogy I used to give was, when Dhoni came to play, he knew everything about Tendulkar, Gavaskar, everything, but he learned all those things, followed them, and you added his helicopter shot. So you have to focus on your helicopter shot. What is your niche thing you are adding, and get everything from outside, right? And be on cloud as much as possible.
So thanks, Ajay, for your thoughts on the cost and not building the things again. And in my way, I used to say reinvention of the wheel is the worst thing a man can do. So, we have to see how to build the aircrafts using the same wheels. So, Chayan, you like to add something on this?
I think what Ajay has mentioned is very, it strikes a chord close to home, because when we started, it was the three co-founders, and then we had one guy who was on the technical side. So if you look at all the tasks that he was doing, he had to focus on the product. And when we started, we started offering design services because we are a bootstrapped company. So there's this one guy who's offering design services, who's doing product development, and uske upar if we had asked him to also maintain this, manage and maintain a server, I think we would have lost him very early on. So I think I completely agree with Ajay. For us, the consideration was how quickly can we start prototyping. How much can we focus on the product development, which, as you said, is the core competence. The cloud services is not what we advertise as our core competence. We offer telemedicine solutions, and for us, what was more important was the device development, the workflow integration. All that is what we were focusing on, and we wanted something, a cloud hosting solution with which we could move at a rapid pace. So at that point of time, again, the ease of deployment, pricing is definitely a consideration, and I think the kind of support that you get from different vendors. So if you look online, the kind of developer community which is existing there, you get a lot of insights and inputs from them. So for us, those were the considerations. So scalability, pricing, and definitely online and offline support.
You were also mentioning about the regulatory and the compliance, if you
Right.
want to mention it here.
Absolutely. So, just to give you a background, I mean, so we are in the healthcare space, and although I mean, there's this concept of HIPAA, so Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. That is, I mean, whenever we talk to potential customers and also, I mean, people in the healthcare space, the first question that they ask is, "Are you HIPAA compliant?" So which means that, I mean, since my data is being hosted on a server, I need the cloud service provider to give me a business associate agreement that the data is being handled in a safe and secure manner. And that becomes an important consideration. So that is something that we are actually, that's a challenge that we are facing today. So the service provider that we are using does not offer a business associate agreement, and that to me becomes a breaking point. Because without the HIPAA compliance, I mean, I might have a solution which works. I mean, I might have taken care of all the security and safety features, but as I still need that stamp, I still need that agreement to call myself HIPAA compliant. And I think, I mean, this is the HIPAA compliance part is very specific for the healthcare industry. I'm sure there are other industries where also the regulatory and regulatory aspects come up, and I think that's an important factor when you choose your service provider.
Yeah. So in addition to the cost, in addition to the ease of doing business, and not building the things again, one of the consideration which everybody should do is the regulatory and the compliance requirement in the industry where you are going to sell your solution. Okay. And that's one thing which I believe we should definitely think in advance before taking an infrastructure decision, because sometimes if you're going to go to a different country, these are the kind of challenges you always face, and then in later stages it is getting very difficult to change the path which you have already taken. Anjul, what's your thoughts? You're from a different organization altogether.
Right. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. And I think Rupaya Exchange is one of the youngest startups among us. We are still a very small team of 20 people. So the challenges we used to face last year are still very, current. As you say about finance, never keep your eggs all in one place. That is strongly relatable to infrastructure as well. So, 2016 was all about cloud and monolithic architecture, RESTful APIs, but I think 2017 will see a huge demand in microservices. So why I say never keep all your infrastructure in the same place, let me give you some examples. So this Tuesday, S3 went down, if you know about it, and many clients faced huge downfalls due to that. Apple Store was shut down because of that. So my perspective is, if all of them were not so reliant on S3, they would have probably avoided that. So let me come back to my experience. When I joined Rupaya Exchange last year, we were hosted on a VPS. So the VPS provider was GoDaddy, and unfortunately the server was in the United States. So we cater to everybody in India. So from Jammu and Kashmir to Karnataka, Kerala, everyone uses our website. And anyone who's sitting in a village who has 128 kilobytes of connection to anyone who has a 10 Mbps optical fiber connection uses the platform. So we had to make sure that the content delivery was, very fast, standardized across everyone. So, US to India latency is about 250 ms. And a lot of customers complained that they were not able to open the platform. And the biggest challenge we faced was moving the infrastructure to the cloud. Now the second step was to move the assets to a CDN. And a CDN is the absolutely most essential technology you have to use if you're on a web platform, because content delivery should be as fast as possible. The cache can be a real lifesaver. So the second thing we used was a CDN. Now, from a fintech company perspective, we have to include many services which are not essential but good to have. So we have an analytics tool. Okay, it's much like Google Analytics, but it has to run constantly for every person. Now, if we used to keep that on our monolithic structure on the same server we used to serve our website on, and if we used to face a huge surge of traffic, the server would crash. So we had to build a microservice, and we were using DigitalOcean's servers for that, and it's absolutely amazing. If we see a huge surge in traffic, the microservice crashes, we don't give a shit. So it will just keep on running. Okay, the main server won't be affected by it. So the next thing is we use OCR a lot. optical character recognition, and it uses image processing. Now, all you know that image processing requires a huge amount of computational power. If we, again, use the same structure that we have in place, it might collapse. So again, we have a microservice running for that. And even if it goes down, the main application would still perform as it's performing without any hiccups. So I think you need to really understand the risks, the possible risks that you might encounter in the future, the data, how secure data should be. And as Ajay, in the previous presentation mentioned that data backups are absolutely necessary. And in case of fintech, I think an offshore backup is necessary, but you should have an in-house backup as well, because the security you can expect from an in-house setup, which is controlled by you at all times, is nothing comparable to a cloud. So I think it's a good thing to move to a cloud, but you should be careful when not to move to a cloud, okay? Everyone wants to move to a cloud, it's all the rage these days. But I think those who know why they should not move to the cloud are the smartest people.
Yeah, Raghav, would you like to add something from your experience?
I mean, agree with all of them. Everyone has very similar learnings. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Use as much of tooling as possible. So let me actually take you guys through a little through my experience of when I started off. So I came from, of course, a much bigger company or a startup. So I had a fair bit of experience at Twitter, where we were dealing with a lot of infrastructure. And the problem with big companies is it's all very beautiful, all very structured, and everything is built in-house, right? But you're not building it. There's another team which is building it, right? And it's probably better than the outsourced tool you could use. So I was not exposed to actually doing hard-boiled deployments on a core machine. It would have been something which I would have had to Google and deal with. That's really not like the bunch of questions I'm sure you guys are facing, right? Even right up till what language should I choose, and you can spend hours and hours discussing language A, language B, infrastructure A, infrastructure B. Right? So when I started off, there were a bunch of options. I ended up choosing one. So for example, Heroku was something which I had chosen 2 years back. It didn't really matter what the choice was, right? Why? Because I wanted a very quick way to just go out there and deploy. I was deploying code probably like 10 times in an hour, right? My site would go down in production. It didn't really matter. Across use cases which you probably can't even foresee right now. And it's always helpful to be in an environment where there are other developers solving, where there's a very strong developer community. So there was a time, probably after 6 months,
that portal acts as the visiting card or the interface of an organization, and it's really important to keep it up all the time. So again, I would lead by an example. Have you all heard about the Freedom 250 phone that was launched last year, right? So it was absolutely amazing idea. Mr. Goyal did one small mistake. He did not host the website on cloud. He used in-house servers to host the website, and the website received so many requests that it went down. Now, naturally, people thought that it was a scam and Ponzi scheme, and also the same was thought by some politicians, because of which the idea got shut and went to dirt. However, if we had used cloud, I think we would all be carrying a 250 rupees phone right now in our pockets. I strongly believe that. So similar thing happened with me. We had a monolithic architecture, as I mentioned earlier, and we had to integrate Amazon's SDK into the platform. Now, I think there was some error in the documentation, and it said that it is compatible with PHP 5.5 plus. Now, we had PHP 5.5 plus. However, when we installed it, our whole website went down. And that was only because of a single word, @yield, which was included in PHP 5.6 and not in 5.5. So never trust an SDK. You should always be prepared if things go wrong. So we had to move that whole module. It was an SES module. We had to move that to a microservice. And now we don't care. If it goes down, the website would still be running. So I think for a CTO, it is most important to keep the website up. No one needs to know how bad the backend becomes. I think the customer-facing side should always be up and running and look smart, because that's the most important part about the business, right? Jo dikhta hai, wahi bikta hai. So CTO's work should start from the front end, and that's how it should be. Thank you.
So Raghav, before we open for questions from the audience, you like to share some of your experience or challenge which you faced, which must have, put you into a spot.
Yeah, I have a very interesting example actually. For all of you guys, if there's one thing which is more important than infrastructure as technology folks, There's just one thing which the non-tech folks also give a shit about is analytics, right? So if you guys actually don't do analytics and if you guys are worrying about your infrastructure choices, reevaluate what you're doing, right? Now here's what happened with us. We used to use, of course, everyone uses third-party analytics tools, right? So you'd probably use something like a Mixpanel or a Google Analytics or multiple out there. There came a time sometime last year, actually beginning of last year, where I started experimenting with, hey, can we start in-housing this, right? And the use case didn't really arrive till mid last year, right? And the reason was, now you have a very strong team and you grow up as a tech company, you'd probably have, and in a consumer tech business, you'd have people who are called product managers, right? So they're really looking at the numbers and trying to figure out what's next and interfacing with the business, right? It's very easy to start messing up with how you analyze things. It's not an infrastructure problem, it's a usage problem, right? Where sometimes it gets really complex and complicated, where people are putting all kinds of segments and information inside one event, right? There's no documentation, of course, right? Because you start up, right? And oftentimes what you realize is actually it's very unusable, right? So what the alternative is, hey, can we devise something in-house which is very customized to what you want? And typically companies do go in-house for this particular reason, right? Because you don't want to stuff in everything. You already have data in your databases. So if you have, for example, let's take a concept of a request. I want an Uber ride, I'm going to place a request, right? I don't need to save everything in my analytics. If I have a request ID, I can easily get it, right? That typically comes in a very in-house use case. So I took the call, we went in-house, right? Now we saved a lot of money. We would have been paying a lot of money otherwise to Mixpanel, which we were, right? But here's the cost which came along, which is something which I still contemplate, right? Is it the right move, the wrong move? Question is, there's nothing right or wrong, you just have to move on, right? But the choice which you have to deal with now is it took me about 2 quarters to convince a team of 6 of our very senior product managers and engineers to start using that. They found it very hard to shift out of a tool like say Google Analytics which they're using and get used to maybe raw querying, because I don't have these visual interfaces on top, right? This is SQL, I can analyze on SQL, right? So it took me 2 months to get that, right? Move ahead, now they actually started using it, and now these questions arrive as to, my data is not actually matching. Google Analytics used to say, or Mixpanel used to show a certain number, our in-house shows a certain number. Who's right? Actually, they both, you have no clue who's right, because they both are raw data sources, right? You can't justify either of them. But this is a choice which you have to live with. You question it every day. It only recently, 3 days back, there was a server capacity issue where it broke off. The beauty with analytics is you put it in a place like S3 or some place, and then you pipe it into a data warehouse, right? So data does not really get lost if you do it well, right? But it can go down, and suddenly your business metrics are all looking wonky, and you really don't know why. And you can spend a whole day, and the whole company is very disturbed. Sabke metrics gir gaye hain, and they're running around, right? And then you question, you've taken this baby in-house, you're developing it, it's a lot of infrastructure which goes in, you try new infrastructure pieces, it probably takes away half of your costing of hosting things, and you start questioning, was it the right call to move in-house, or should you have just used a tool, should you have lived with a more expensive version perhaps? Did you do the right call by reinventing the wheel in some sense? I think all of us deal with these calls almost on a daily basis. There's no right call or wrong call, but it's a question of, can you really optimize on the call you've taken? And you should be fine. Sometimes you have to move back. I know we were trying a new database choice out. We experimented for a month and it didn't work out. So we just gave up and we rolled back. It's fine. Right? So again, be prepared for a lot of these rapid changes. Don't dwell over things too much, because you're really slowing down your pace of development then. But make a choice and go about it the right way. Don't do it half-heartedly. Otherwise, it's anyways going to fail.
Thanks, Raghav. So we were supposed to be here for 40 minutes. I just realized that we have already crossed 35. Okay, so it was very fast. But we are open for some questions. So I'll be happy to take any questions from any of you. Any questions for us?
This is your chance, guys.
Yeah.
Don't feel shy.
Yeah. At least somebody has to start. Yeah.
Brave soldier.
Around the decision you had made on going in-house with an analytics tool. What was the process of you taking this decision? Did you consider, other commercially available solutions which were less costly? Did you consider the open source options, maybe an open source option which could be extended with some API development or additional extensions? Because doing something in-house on a very raw, approach, everything getting built up by ourselves and everything else. So I would like to know how you took a decision to do it very rawly by your own self, putting team and building it, and obviously doing the infrastructure parts also, and why you didn't consider any open source solution and kind of extending it with some additional support from your development team.
Great. I won't deep dive too much. Maybe we can even take it offline. But I'd throw some words, won't explain. If you guys know it, great. But I lied. Everything does not go in-house, right? Like, of course, you'd leverage tools. So the process happened where, have you guys heard of Mixpanel? So fairly popular, right? Great tool. So let's take that as an example. Again, doesn't matter what that tool was. Right? So it's a complete outhouse solution to take care of analytics. Beautiful solution. It allows you to make funnels. You can segment things. It automatically takes things from your app. Right? When you're developing an app for the first time, you really don't want to bother with how do you track device version. You don't even have device versioning. We introduced device versioning much later. Right? So that was the process. It was expensive. That was not really the biggest concern, because if it's just money that you're trading off, oftentimes you're willing to survive a little longer if you have money in the bank, right? Because the trade-off cost of actually developing something faster instead of redoing it is always higher. Developing fast is always higher than redoing it, right? Over here, the problem was the way we were using it was very difficult to use. It was getting very unstructured, right? An event, you'd send 50 events. Right now, the naming of events is not well taken care of when you're starting. One person doing it, there's a convention maintained. 5 people do it in a span of suddenly 2 months. You don't have the time to set a convention. So you have events which are all caps, you have events which are underscores. And by the way, this is all not documented anywhere, right? Because people are just putting events. This is what you do as a startup, right? How many of you actually document anything? Right? If you do document, I would say stop documenting too much also, right? There's always a right time for it. So the problem was it was very unstructured, and it also did not allow. So whenever we had to introduce a new segment to visualize a particular event against, we would have had to change the app and add it. We didn't need that because you could always query it and cross it against something, right? So there are a couple of options. You could take data dumps from Mixpanel, put it in-house, put it in your database. That was an option. You could try an open source third-party tool, which would have been the same effect, right? So what we ended up using was, it's fairly easy to actually store events. You anyways need to do that at a certain scale because you need to maintain these logs, right? So we basically just we put up a consumer, started consuming those events, put it in S3. It doesn't work real time as Mixpanel does, right? So that's a trade-off which you're fine with. Building a real-time analytics system is fairly hard in-house, right? Because that's when suddenly your infrastructure becomes very, very evolved, right? So we did that. We used a data warehouse from outside, which we don't manage, right? So you kind of skip those costs, because what was important for us was the use case of how we were doing analytics, right? With a secondary benefit of, hey, we might get to save a lot of money. We actually did try setting up this whole infrastructure. Let's try Hadoop, guys. Like, damn, engineers getting excited. Hadoop bhi try karte hain. Let's scale nahi Hadoop ka. Like, that's a very secondary use case. If you have to first optimize how you're using data first, right? And Hadoop and all, like, these are all secondary things which come into place. Like, freshers come in getting very excited about machine learning karna hai. Machine learning ka matlab kya hai? You've done it in classrooms, you've heard about these key terms, but they don't actually get used for a long, long time. So that was the call. We did experiment and expose ourselves to a lot of other alternatives, but the main problem was how we were using it. And that dictated the move in infrastructure, not so much so to do with just costing and things. And even there, we kind of still leverage a lot of other tools. Just that we've gone a little deeper, gone below the layer of using analytics as a product. So we do the product part, but still leverage infrastructure which is not ours.
We can take one more question. Now there are more questions. Yeah.
Stock trading platform.
Mhm.
So I also faced this issue, like we were migrating the physical disks. So you understand about the tick by tick information in a stock platform and everything.
Right.
So just because we were migrating from a disk which was 2 TB to something which was 8 TB, we got the data corrupt and we lost the entire data. But because it was a staging environment, a test development environment, we could survive. But you were speaking about your some service which got down and your website entirely
Right.
went down.
Right.
Can you explain, like, so what was the major business impact and how did you deal about it? Because you understand this kind of data is too costly. If I would have sold that 1600 GB of data, I would have earned huge.
Right. So when we faced that problem, so the biggest business impact was the customers we lost during that period. But in your case, you're saying that the stocks data was 2 TB and it got corrupted. I think if you're storing a data which is often stored on a storage device and it has to scale often, cloud storage would have been the best solution. And I believe the 2 TB disk that you are talking about was that in-house. That's the biggest problem that caused it. It should have been on the cloud. So suppose the Mozilla Firefox, okay, they launch a new version, and it is a buggy version, and it crashes, and they ask you to send a crash report. So they don't know how many people are going to send that crash report, and if they place that storage in-house, it will not work, obviously. So they have to go to scale. So I think for something like stocks, you have to make the storage at scale. So that's how you would have avoided it. And to sum it all up, what I have learned from my experience is experiment early and experiment often and adapt quickly. Because if you're not evolving constantly, you'll go extinct. And cloud is the perfect platform to experiment. So even if you want to go in-house, first experiment if that thing will work on the cloud and will it scale. If it does not scale, you can go in-house. That's not a problem. But yes, when scaling is of utmost importance, you should always prefer cloud.
Yeah, that's the last question we're going to take. Yeah, thanks.
So, like being the CTO, so you must, like you mentioned, that you have to take a lot of crucial decisions on a day-to-day basis. So I'm also starting with few projects, and I have to decide upon. I have to take such decisions. So one of the major things is like what your infrastructure should be. So there are so many options out there. There are so many languages, frameworks, databases choices. So maybe can you give some tips on how do you decide upon the right infrastructure which you can choose for your idea? Because when you go and read about it online, there are so many choices, and I believe that if you start with one and then you later realize that it was a wrong move, it takes a lot of time to shift to some other thing. Like you mentioned in Twitter, you had to shift from Ruby to Scala. So how should we decide upon the infrastructure or the language, the framework, the database? So, well, yeah.
So the first thing I will talk about the philosophical one small point which startups should follow always is that as you would have seen across, moving forward is more important than dwelling upon the decision a lot, right? That is one thing. Just keep it as a philosophical point. But how do you decide how do I move forward? So one fundamental lens is that you have to ask the question, if this thing goes wrong, how costly it is to change. So don't worry a lot about things which can be changed easily, fixed easily. Always you see people will fight about something, small decision, function or small things with this library, worry about fighting for 3 days is not worth it. Maybe changing might take half an hour or 4 days time, 4 hours time. That having said that, this is a ground rule. So in startup moving forward, high speed execution with fundamental mindset that I'll take 10 steps forwards and I might need to take 2 steps backward. So I'll be plus 10 minus 2 is equal to plus 8 steps forward. Versus in larger organization, the stage is different. For them, AWS going down for some time is a big issue. For them, they cannot be plus 10 minus 2. They can be plus 1 minus 0. I'll walk only 1 step, but I'll not make any mistake, right? So bias towards action and speed, number one. So now how do you decide? So these are fundamental bedrocks, philosophical bedrocks. To decide, there is one simple thing, that if you are solving what is the niche problem you are solving? If you are solving some financial problem, you are solving some medical problem, you are solving some other services problem. Focus on that. You have to be on the first front runner on the bleeding edge of that solution. For other solution, for technology, infrastructure, don't be the front runner. You don't want to be the bleeding edge of the technology of everywhere else because you become the white box tester of it otherwise, right? You have to be on the bleeding edge of technology -1. Let other people use it, find all the bugs in that, fix it, and then you take it. And then you have 4 options in the internet you find. You go about evaluating all the things like ease of usage, number 1, cost is there or not, right? And then how large is the community and tooling around it. If I'm stuck tomorrow, will I be able to find on the internet the solution or not? Because that is not your niche area that you want to dwell into and spend 1 week to solve the problem. You have to solve some other healthcare problem, right? So these things should be tooling and matured practices. That is why you don't want to be the last one also. 1 step behind the bleeding edge is probably a comfortable place where there is enough community of React.js, enough community of AngularJS, be there. Don't be in the last older one. So when you're choosing technologies, look for community, cost, ease of usage, and whether the community is evolving. You will see both of the 2 technologies are at the same number of users, active users, and all those contributors. But then you have to see the trend. Somebody is coming from top to 2,000, 2 lakhs, and somebody has gone from 0 to 2 lakhs. Both are there at this point in time, but what is the trajectory going towards, right? So evaluate that way because you will say PHP is a big community. Probably that is not the right choice because it's big community is coming from down till here. Look at the guy who is there, but it's gone, right? So look at the ease of usage, community, cost, and all those things. Yeah.
Just to give you an example, we ran into a similar situation. This was, we were developing a remote monitoring system, so it involved live streaming of very high frequency data. And at that point of time, I mean, we evaluated WebSockets and also looked at, I mean, basic architecture wise. So we landed on GWT because, I mean, there was somebody in the team who was familiar with that, was comfortable with it. So yeah, I mean, it was later on when we started doing more research, we realized that, okay, the community is not really that active. The frequency of changes is not very high. But at that point of time, the decision was we need to have a proof of concept. We need to move ahead. At a later point of time, if we switch the architecture, that's fine. But for the next year and a half, we need to have a product which works, which we can take in front of customers. And so GWT served a good purpose. Now that we have figured out the other challenges in the product or the service offering, we are making the switch from GWT, we're going into a WebSockets architecture because now WebSockets also has become more mature. I mean, it had just started in 2011. So this is, we were evaluating it in 2012. We said, nah, it's not very mature yet. But now everybody is talking about WebSockets. So over the next few months, we'll actually be making the transition.
Thank you very much for patiently listening to all of us. I hope the session was useful. If you'll have more questions, you can write to us or you can I think there will be tea after this. You can have, discuss with us offline. Thank you. Now, Mohan, up to you.
Much, Dr. Rishi. Can we have a huge round of applause for some of these technical leaders who've come here and shared their experience and expertise with us on making infrastructure decisions. We have a small token of appreciation for each of you. Thank you so much. Can we please have the gifts, please? Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Rishi, thank you so much. Mr. Ajay, thank you so much. Thank you. Anju, thank you. Thank you so much, Raghav. Can we have another huge round of applause for all of them? Thank you.